Good morning and welcome to the MCBC. My name is Enoch. I'm one of the pastors here. At the MCBC, we are a multi-generational, multicultural, as well as an outward-thinking church. And so this morning, if you have any questions about the Christian faith, or if you have any comments, or you simply want to say hi, feel free to write on the live chat. That way we're able to get in contact with you right away and say hi back or respond to your questions. At this time, I'm going to hand the time over to our worship leader so that she can lead us in some songs of praise to God, or feel free to sing out loud or meditate on the lyrics. I hope you have enough energy since we did lose an hour of sleep. So yeah, let these lyrics and the music lead you into worshiping our living God.
Freedom for Hi, my name is Victoria, and I've been going to the Wednesday night evening prayer meetings for many years now. At the meetings, we take time to read and reflect on the Psalms together, and then we take the rest of the evening to pray for the things that are pressing on into our hearts, whether they be current world events or needs of our church community. And I do love praying with others because it reminds me of the needs beyond myself. And I also get to hear from God's heart through the prayers of others. So I hope you can join us on the first and third Wednesdays of each month at 7:30 p.m. to pray together.
Well, this is the point in our service where we join together in prayer. Prayer, again, is a simple opportunity for us to hear from God and then to respond to Him with our words in terms of the requests that we have, the things that are on our hearts. And so we want to just continue to invite you to pray with the people that you're gathered around with. If you're on a watch party or you're with your family, or if you're even by yourself, you can pray out loud, you can pray under your breath in silence, you can reflect. Even so, you're also willing, if you're willing, you can also put your prayers in the chat section. Just type up your prayers as we're praying. As we pray, again, if you want to share with us the things that are on your heart, you can always share with us your prayer requests, share with it in the chat or in the comment section. Go ahead and email us at prayers@mcbccanada.com or post it on our online prayer wall. For today, we just want to direct you to think of a few areas to be praying for. This past week, we have celebrated sort of the 1 year of COVID being in Canada, and even Justin Trudeau had invited us to consider a time to mourn and remember. And so it's a good opportunity for us to pray for loved ones we have lost, to pray for those who are just going through grief, to pray for those who have caught COVID and who are still just needing prayers of healing. So we just want to invite you to be praying for that. As well, we want to just keep an eye out to what's going on in the world. We continue to pray over the country of Myanmar as they go through some political turmoil. We also remember a place like Taiwan that has recently experienced a great drought and is experiencing water crisis issues. So we can be praying for these two other countries as well. So in this time, we're going to pray. So let's pray together. So Lord, in your mercy, hear our prayers. Amen.
Today's scripture comes from Psalm 139. O Lord, you have searched me and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you know it completely, O Lord. You hem me in, behind and before. You have laid your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me, and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful, I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book, before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of the sand. When I awake, I'm still with you. If only you would slay the wicked, O God. Away from me, you bloodthirsty men. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord, and abhor those who rise up against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me, and know my anxious thoughts. See if there are any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. This is the reading of his word.
Well, good morning and thanks for joining us this Sunday here at the MCBC. My name is Ken, I'm one of the pastors here at the church, and it's my privilege to share with you from the Word of God today. If you're catching us now, we're in the middle of this sermon series called Dangerous Prayers. And the reason for this sermon series is that during the season of Lent, which is what we're in right now, it's a preparation time for us as we look on to Easter. And this whole Dangerous Prayers sermon series has been really asking some very baseline, starting point Christianity kinds of prayer questions. How are we doing with our faith? Maybe there are some times that we've totally neglected parts of our spiritual journey, or maybe we've allowed it to change and morph to the point that it's unrecognizable even as Christianity. And so much of what we've been talking about is really counter to a lot of what we call safe Christianity, the keep me safe, the keep me protected, the healthy, wealthy, safe types of Christianity, and engaging more, again, with what it means to really be a baseline starting point Christian, to look at areas of saying to God, make me bold, make me share about the things that are important to you. God, speak to me, talk to me, tell me what it is you would like me to do. Last week we looked at God, break my heart. Again, make me care about the things that you care about, God. And today we're going to look at another dangerous prayer. And again, they're not dangerous to the point of, you are putting yourself in a compromising position. It's actually just a starting point for many of us, a point that sometimes I think we have neglected or we move so far away from that we forget, and it kind of looks unusual now in the Christian faith. And so today's dangerous prayer is this: search me, O God. Search me, O God. Let me start off by saying this. A lot of us have to answer this question in life. Who am I? Who am I? It's an identity question. It's one that we are always wrestling with. When you're a teenager, you put on multiple hats, you change the way you dress, you maybe change your hairstyle, all in an effort to find out and determine who you are. And as you get older, the hope is at some point you land on that identity piece and you understand more of who you are, and you operate through life out of that understanding. But for some of us, we still struggle and wrestle with this even into our 50s and 60s even. It's a very important question. If we don't answer it well, we find ourselves stuck in a rut at times. And the reason why I'm bringing up this question is I think the psalmist here in Psalm 139, which was read for us, David, who writes the psalm, he's really keying in on what he thinks about himself, but he's also keying in on what he thinks about God. And so the reality is he's going to look at God and allow who God is to frame then who he is as a person, and therefore answer the question of who am I? And part of this thing about this dangerous prayer of search me, O God, is that we're going to have to wrestle with parts of our life and parts of who we are that we may not really like. I want to share with you a piece of scripture here. It says Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. It says this: "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it?" See, here's the reality of our situation. And we were doing a series on the book of Genesis before we went into this series. The starting point of sin, the starting point of where we fall short, the starting point of where we are separated from God is this thing called sin. And sin is so pervasive. It messes up who we are. It's tainted every part of who we are. It's tainted all our courses of action that we take as a result. And it allows for us to redefine for ourselves what we believe is right and wrong. And what this passage here in Jeremiah is saying is that our hearts are so messed up. Our hearts are so just completely, utterly broken. And a lot of times we lie to ourselves. And in fact, we lie to ourselves the most. See, the heart is deceitful above all things. It's just that we are constantly struggling with the very fact that we are deceiving even our own selves. And so today, if you have a Bible, I'm going to encourage you to look at Psalm 139. We've already read it for you this morning, but I just want to key in on this passage to kind of give us some context and to give us an understanding of what it means for God to search me. Well, let me give you some context to this psalm. The psalm here is Psalm 139. It's really very simply broke down. It's 4 paragraphs, about 6 verses each. And it's a question that King David, who wrote this, he's facing himself with these questions about who he is. And so he's now acknowledging, again, he's going to lay it all out in front of us. So why this dangerous prayer then? Search me, O God. What is this dangerous prayer going to do? What is it about? Well, why is it dangerous? Again, it's not dangerous per se, as in you're going to compromise yourself, but it's really more of a reality check. It's a reality check. Many of us, sometimes we just don't like to deal with the reality that's before us. We like to hide from it. We can avoid it. We want to busy ourselves. During this pandemic, maybe we've done all these various things to kind of just not have to deal with certain things. So we take up an extra hobby. We try baking various things, right? There were so many different opportunities to bake. Sourdough bread was a big thing. Making your own focaccia bread. People started doing other things to keep themselves busy, all in an effort to avoid the reality of the pandemic situation. Some of us have even gotten into the whole binge watching thing. I'll share with you one thing that's happened in our house: Korean dramas. Korean binge-watching dramas, and they have driven me up the wall. So we like to hide, we like to avoid, we like to busy ourselves because sometimes we just don't want to stop and check ourselves. We're afraid of what we're going to find if we stop and examine ourselves, to check our motivations, to check our attitudes, to check why do we do what we do, to check our assumptions, to take some time to introspect, to discern, or even what the Bible calls to have wisdom. All these things are sometimes we're just so afraid of what's there that we don't want to do this. And that's why this can be considered a dangerous prayer, because the reality is we're going to have to confront reality, the reality of who we really are. And so to get us started, I'm going to look at Psalm 139. If you have a Bible, I want to just turn you there, turn it on or open it up there. And so the first section is in verses 1 through 6, and it's this beautiful section. It says here, "You have searched me, Lord, and you know me. You know when I sit and when I rise. You perceive my thoughts from afar. You discern my going out and my lying down. You are familiar with all my ways. Before a word is on my tongue, you, Lord, know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too lofty for me to attain." The first question is this: how well does God know me? How well does God know me? And this is the starting point. It's really not just about me, it's about God. And how well does God know me? There's this great theological word that we use. It's called the omniscience of God, that God knows everything. God knows everything. And so here's the psalmist. He's writing and he's saying, God, you know me. He says, you have searched me and you know me. And the idea there behind that word is that you dig into me. You have examined every part of me. You know every single thing. He says, when I sit down and when I rise, the things that I do passively, when I'm sitting down, I passively do. And when I rise, with the things that I'm actively doing, you know. When I'm resting or when I'm active, God, you know these things. He knows the subconscious pieces of our life, the thoughts that are below the surface, the motivations behind everything that we do. God already knows it. You know how I think, and you know what I think about, and you know what I constantly think about. And so God already knows all these things. And he knows the choices that I'm going to make, the habits that I have. And so he knows me intimately from the inside to the out. One of the things I like is that he even knows my language. For some of us, he knows every single word and he understands it. I don't know if you've ever had communication breakdowns with people in relationships. Maybe it's with your spouse, or even if English is not even your first language and you have a different language. Oftentimes I wonder, I've always asked my wife, when you hear the voice in your head as you're thinking, what language do you use, right? And my kids also speak multiple languages. So God knows all these languages, and I think it's just great for us to think about. He knows the past, present, and future, and that's just something for us to consider. He knows the past, what was behind us. He knows what's before us, and he lays his hand upon us presently, even right now. And it's amazing that God, you know me better than I know me, and you know me better than anyone else ever knows me. And here's the amazing part is when I don't even have the right words to express, and when I can't even express myself, you already know what I'm trying to say, you know what I'm thinking. So God, you have explored every single part of me. You know the unconscious, semi-conscious, subconscious, unconscious things. You know me intimately. He knows me. He loves you. He loves me. And he says, this is how important we are to him. And so this is a God who knows us. He knows us. When we ask the question, who am I? God says, I know you. I know you. The second thing then in verses 7 through 12, it says, it allows us to deal with another part of God's character. So here's what's written. Where can I go from your spirit? Where can I flee from your presence? If I go up to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in the depths, you are there. If I rise on the wings of the dawn, if I settle on the far side of the sea, even there your hand will guide me. Your right hand will hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness will hide me and the light become night around me, even the darkness will not be dark to you. The night will shine like the day, for darkness is as light to you. Well, the first question is, who is this God? And he knows me. How close is this God to me? And here's another theological term that we often use. It's called the omnipresence of God, that God is everywhere. There is nowhere we can go that we can escape from the presence of God. Can I really go anywhere? And so the psalmist writes, if I go here, you're there. If I go there, you're also there. If the heavens, and we always think of God in the heavens and he's there. He also uses the depths below in Sheol or hell. God, you are there. Even though we're separated, you are there. You rule and reign there still today. You run the entire world. So the presence of God is supposed to be this comforting thing. It's not necessarily a scary thing, but it's supposed to be comforting. There's no distance that can ever separate you from God. And even the psalmist writes, even darkness cannot separate me from God. He is never too far, and he is always accessible. I remember growing up as a kid, you would play this wonderful game called Murder in the Dark. We would turn off all the lights in the basement, and we would hide in various parts of the basement. And as friends, we would then roam through, and one of us had to be it, and you were trying to find everyone. It's like hide and seek in the dark. And, we would hide because in the darkness, you can't hide from God in darkness. You can't even hide from God in the darkness. He is never too far away. And that's an amazing thing too. He is never too far away. Sometimes we do deal with the reality in our own spiritual journeys that God seems far. Oftentimes the result of the farness of God is not so much that God is far, it's that we're far from God. But again, he is always accessible, and that gap is never too big for God. That gap, that distance we put between us and God is never too big for God, that he can't close it in an instant. And so God is always close by. He is close to you and he's close to me. He's omnipresent. And then the next section in Psalm 139 is verses 13 to 18. And here the psalmist just sort of declares some truth. He's asking the question, if God is omniscient, he knows everything. If God is omnipresent, he's everywhere. How true is that? Do I know this to be true? And so he says this in verse 13. He starts, "For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would outnumber the grains of sand. When I awake, I am still with you." Let me share with you the other theological term that we use here is the omnipotence of God, the God who is all powerful. And so David, as he writes, the psalmist, as he writes this, he's like, how do I know this is true? Well, just look at how I am made. Look at how I am created and the complexity of the human body, all the things that are essential for life, all the things that are beyond my control, all the things that are constantly at work around me that are out of my control, and yet I don't have to think about them and they come to be and they allow me to live. Not one of us right now is thinking about whether our heart should beat the next moment. It beats, it pumps blood. Not many of us are thinking consciously about breathing in and out. We do that without thought. Gravity keeps us grounded. We're not floating away off, in the distance. We're grounded in gravity. There's so many things that are constantly at work, and yet God controls them all. God has created us. He has formed our bodies, our muscular skeletal systems with our ligaments and our joints and our bones and our muscles, the organs that are interconnected and that support other organs and their functions. And so all this to say is that we're not some impersonal collection of cells and structures. Is that God was with me in my conception. God was forming me at my conception. And that all my days are determined by God. You and I didn't choose our birthday, and life has always been unplanned and unexpected, and we can control only so much of it. And there are many times that life happens with unexpectedness and unplannedness. Someone else is always planning those days, and his name is God. And God's revelation to us is that life makes no sense then. Life would not make any sense without God. And the evidence of his design and his morality that continues to permeate every single part of our lives is proof. It's proof that he is true and he is all powerful. He is omnipotent. And so once you put all these three pieces together, who is this God? He's omniscient. He knows everything. Where is he? He is everywhere. He's omnipresent. He's so close by. How do we know that? He demonstrated in how he created everything and how everything continues to operate, his power, his omnipotence. And now we're left with what David's response is, King David, the psalmist here. And here's his response, and it's kind of a weird turn if you really look at it. So I'm going to read for you verse 19 and following. It says this, "If only you, God, would slay the wicked. Away from me, you who are bloodthirsty. They speak of you with evil intent. Your adversaries misuse your name. Do I not hate those who hate you, Lord, and abhor those who are in rebellion against you? I have nothing but hatred for them. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." After all this dialogue and discussion about who God is, now comes the point of who am I? And David has this raw response, this raw emotion, but it's also a raw emotion that's leading him somewhere. And there's, so his first response is kill the wicked, kill all the people who are bad. Now, if you hear that, you're going to sit there and go, wait, isn't Christianity supposed to be about love? And even Jesus said something along the lines like, love your enemies. And you see, don't forget, this is not God's truth here. This is David's response. It's part of God's scriptural truth. But what we can see from this is that David is raw. He's a person with emotions, and he's not afraid to hide them with God. And he's not afraid for us to see it as well. He says, now that I know all of this stuff about God, now that I know all these great things about God, he knows me, he's close, and I have proof. Let me ask you something, God. And so David, he asks two simple things of God. He's in verse 19, he says, God, would you do something about the problem of evil? Would you do something? And for many of us, that's a big question that we wrestle with today. What is the purpose of evil? Why does evil exist? Why does suffering exist? And we have that same question. But David's response is this, what to do with wickedness, what to do with evil? Wipe it out. Wipe it out. Now, David's not saying here, let me be the one to do it. No, he's not saying that. He's saying, God, if you are who you say you are, please deal with the problem of evil. Deal with this evil that I see all around me. Why? What kind of evil do I see? In verses 20 to 22, he says he's talking about what the people do. It's not what people do to David that he's upset with. It's actually what they do to God that David is upset with. He says there are people there who speak of God with evil intent. His adversaries, people against God who misuse God's name. People who use God's name to carry out their own agendas to please themselves. People who use God's name in vain to just sort of put a cherry on top of what they're saying. Do you know, this reminds me that there are a lot of times as Christians, we do this. We are like what David is criticizing. We spiritualize things. And we misuse God's name, and we misuse God's presence as a way to get what we want. I've heard people, even pastors have said, I believe God has told me to tell you. I had a dream that God showed me that we were supposed to do this, or I've prayed about this and therefore I know. And we do that. Sometimes we just misuse God to get across what we want. And so here's the thing that David says. He says, this is what people do, and God, you need to do something about it. But with that, what am I trying to get at here? What I'm trying to get at is simply this, is that, God is going to do things about evil. And David says, I don't have all the right answers, God. I'm not thinking straight. And so here's the prayer, God. Here's the dangerous prayer that I want to give to you. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. God, I don't know what's going on around me. I don't know everything that's going on around me. And maybe my solution here, God, is that it's inferior and it's probably even wrong. But God, I trust you. I trust you to lead me through this. Show me my own wickedness that I may not even see, that may go undetected, or as Jeremiah says, the way that I've deceived myself, and lead me in the right way. And so that's what this dangerous prayer affords to us, is that we would examine ourselves, and that we would allow God to examine ourselves. That we would present to God who we are and just say, God, here I am. But God, there's got to be something that I'm not seeing. There's got to be something about me that's just not right. And I need to come to terms with it, and I need to deal with it. So when we ask this question, when we ask this prayer, search me, O God, do you actually know the God whom you're asking to show you these things? Is this the God that you actually know? A God who's omniscient, a God who's omnipresent, a God who's omnipotent. Because what this leads to for David is obedience. Is that he's going to ask God, you know me, so show me what's wrong with me. Do we trust God enough that when he shows it to us, we will take him at his word and we will do something with it? See, the reality is we don't always know what's going on in our heart. Like Jeremiah says, we deceive ourselves a lot with what's going on in our heart. We say, I'm doing this for the right motives, but deep down inside, sometimes we've just convinced ourselves of that. We over-spiritualize some things, or we use the right words to proclaim how Christian we are, but deep down inside, it's completely rotten and it's all backwards and we're not doing it the right way. A lot of times we take these two verses 23 and 24, and we use them as motivational theology for us to help us through difficult times. Oh, search me, God. Know my anxious thoughts. And we just take that part and we say, all the fears and worries and anxieties, God, help us to see that and take care of those things for me. And the prayer is not that. It's not about knowing what causes me worries, fears, and anxieties. It's the very fact that, God, you need to search my heart because there is rotten stuff in me. When I see how great you are, when I see how magnificent you are, I need to look back at my own heart because the motivations that I have, even though they may sound right, they aren't always pure. And so the prayer challenge here is really, do I know God? Do I trust you? And if so, show me where I'm not living up. Show me how I like to accuse others more and excuse myself more. God, point out the things that I need to deal with, not deny, but to deal with them. And turn to a God who offers us forgiveness and healing and restoration. When I think of how Jesus did things, oftentimes the story of Jesus reminds me when he came to this earth, he confronted sinners. And the idea of Jesus confronting sinners, he was with people who were the despised of society. He was with the tax collectors, the thieves of society. He was with the prostitutes, people who sold themselves for sex. He was with all kinds of people who were rejected by the religious parts of the world. He was with them, and they were labeled sinners. But here's the thing. We actually behave far more like the Pharisees that Jesus confronted, more so than we are as sinners that Jesus hung out with. We actually behave far more like Pharisees that Jesus confronted, more so than the sinners that Jesus hung out with. See, the Pharisees, they thought they had it all together. They thought they had all the answers. They thought they were spiritualizing and saying the right things, but the reality was they were so far from God because they wouldn't do this. They could see God, they could acknowledge his omniscience, his omnipresence, his omnipotence, but this part here, the one of looking at my heart and asking God to show us the things that are just offline, off center from him, this is the part that makes us like Pharisees, that we're unwilling to look at those motivations. See, David's motivation, get rid of all the wicked. Okay, but I know, God, I know even if I have the right motives to say that, search my heart to make sure, and if it's not even close, remotely close to the way you're going to do it, change it. Change how I look. There are some practical questions that we can apply to our lives here, I think, that when we invite God to search me, that we're really laying before God who we are and all the rotten stuff. And the reality is we don't like to deal with that stuff. We don't like to deal with it ourselves. God forbid, we don't want anyone to see that about us. But God already knows. And that's the ironic part of this. So oftentimes God speaks through others as well, and other people who are trying to tell me that maybe there's something in my life that may not be up to snuff with what God is saying. And he's searched us out and he's trying to convince us of it by saying it through someone else. So maybe sometimes we need to listen to others. What are others? Is there a consistent pattern of things that people are telling me all the time? Maybe you don't have enough patience, or maybe you don't listen well, or maybe you're lying. And when people don't listen to when someone's confronting us, oftentimes that reveals something about our own heart. Oftentimes we also rationalize and excuse what we do. We say, well, my motivations are correct, or I had good intentions, and we rationalize it and we make excuses for ourselves. Well, there's nothing in the Bible that really says anything about this, and we rationalize it for ourselves. Oftentimes we also become very defensive. If we can become very defensive about something, oftentimes that's because that is something that we really need to deal with. So I want to offer this challenge to you this week. Take 5 minutes a day. Sit in a quiet spot in your house. Sit on a chair, sit in quiet somewhere. And ask God, search me. Show me where I'm not living up to what you're asking. Show me how I mistreat others. Show me how I haven't really acknowledged you as Lord and as Savior. And maybe during this time, as you say, God, search me, Allow God to bring up to the surface those areas of our life that we really don't want to deal with, and just again present them to God. They're not new to God. Oftentimes these kinds of prayers, it's really that we would have a reality check with where we are and who we are. And when we bring them to God, God will say, you know what? I take that. I bring it to the cross of Jesus and I stick it there. And it's paid for. It's dealt with. You are forgiven. You are free. You have love and mercy and grace. And so that's my invitation to you this week, to pray this prayer. Search me, O God. So I just want to say thank you again for joining us this Sunday here at the MCBC. We hope that your time here was one that would help you think about your relationship with God and that journey you're on in terms of faith. And so as we head out from here, we just want to keep you apprised of a few things. Easter is right around the corner. We want to just continue to point you in the direction of Easter. So it's a great opportunity for you to invite a friend to experience our online services. We have 3 services. Thursday night is our communion service, but that's going to be on our YouTube channel. So we're inviting you to be a part of it. So prepare the bread and cup and be a part of it on our YouTube channel. Good Friday service at 10 a.m. It will be on our YouTube channel as well, and we'll just be hearing from various people in our church as we talk about the Good Friday and what it means for us today. And Sunday right now, we are actually working with Kingsway Baptist Church to put together a service that blesses both of our church communities. So we hope that you'll be a part of that and enjoy hearing from both myself and the pastor out at Kingsway. And so we're excited for Easter. We love Easter. We're hoping that the message of Easter doesn't get lost during this COVID season. So invite a friend or someone you know that could be a part of our service to hear the great story of Jesus. As well, small groups. We just want to let you know again, small groups is one of our touch points in terms of community, of family, in terms of life together. And so we want to encourage you at this time. We're going to begin a new semester of our small groups, and we want you to be a part of that. So if you're not connected to a small group, or if you haven't dropped in on a small group in a while, or you don't even know what a small group is, or if it's time for you to change a group, all that stuff, we want to invite you to click the link in our chat section right now. You can sign up for a group or change a group, or you can email us at groups@mcbccanada.com. So thank you again for being a part of this service. As we depart from here, we hope that you will take some time to allow God to search your heart, to reveal to you areas in your life that need to be addressed from a godly perspective. But go out and see people with the eyes of Jesus. And we invite you to consider these 3 questions. Who is at special risk during this time? What can we do to help? And whom shall we send? So until next week, here at the MCBC, love and peace. We'll see you again.
Hi, my name is Peter Ching, and I'm part of the connection team here at the MCBC. Our team wants to say thank you for joining our service today. If this is your first time with us, or if you have never connected with us, we would love to hear from you. Please click the link in the chat or in the comment section, or send us an email at connection@mcbccanada.com and let us know you dropped in today. It's always great to meet our guests. We hope to connect with you. Thank you and have a good day.